You're good, Jean.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Gene Coltas, presiding member for the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting this morning. I declare the meeting open at 9:30 a.m. and in doing so, I acknowledge we're hosting the meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2025 and DAP Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website, and panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. As I said, my name's Gene Coltas, presiding member. To my left is Deputy Presiding Member Dale Page and Specialist Member Mr John Syme. We're also joined at the meeting by Mayor Teresa Lyons from the City of Gosnells and Councillor Saiful Islam from the City of Gosnells. Item 2, apologies, I don't have any recorded. Item 3, the panel notes that meetings of the previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Part B, the City of Gosnells applications. Panel members, I have to ask for due consideration declaration. So will you please indicate that you have considered all the documentation contained within Part B of the agenda, Part B related information? Please confirm by a show of hands. That's unanimous, thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Councillors, could you advise whether any of these items have been dealt with at either a briefing or a council meeting? No?
No.
Thank you. Okay. Do any members wish to disclose any other declaration of interest? No, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 3, Form 1 DAP applications. Item 3.1, lot number 2000, number 6 Burnham Road, Canning Vale, proposed motor vehicle wash. We have 2 presenters for this item today. We have Mr Christian Parker from Element Advisory and Mr Alessandro Stagno from Apex Planning. Mr Parker, you're the first cab off the rank. So if you'd like to make your presentation, which we have received prior to the meeting, and we have all read it. So if you'd like to speak to the item, please.
Thank you, panel members. As you know, my name's Christian Parker from Element Advisory, representing Belvin Clark, who are the owner and operators of the Jacaranda Gardens retirement living directly opposite the site. So part of that site is there's 84 units. Probably a handful of them take access directly off Burnham Road, specifically opposite where the vehicle access is taken from this application before us. The application proposal introduces a high turnover 24-hour land use on an already constrained crossover. This is mostly due to the service station that was built in 2021 and causes regular queuing at the Burnham Road exit. During the Tuesday cheap fuel day peak, these queues extend onto the roadway, blocking many of the residents at the Jacaranda Gardens villas for quite some time. This has all been documented and provided to the city, so they are aware of it. The original traffic report failed to include this existing service station and simply labelled the additional 30 vehicles per hour as minimal. The revised report now includes the peak hour data, specifically from the Tuesday peak time, but still it concludes that this impact is not significant. This is despite what is an approximately 30% increase in the peak hour movements on an intersection that's already known to fail. The application proposed no traffic management solutions and effectively adds more traffic to an already problematic crossover without addressing the current issues. The applicant's acoustic report also states that application complies with the regulations. However, an independent PR review by the SLR acoustic team has raised several concerns regarding this report. Firstly, the vehicle noise within the private commercial area has been excluded based on it being considered a road. This is inconsistent with the Road Traffic Act, as these are essentially not public roads. Furthermore, tonal noise has been excluded. However, during the early mornings and evening times when the site is arguably going to be less busy, some of the noise would likely be considered tonal due to less people there. And then finally, the model appears to show the manual bays without roofs, despite when you're looking at the plans and the perspectives, these bays are clearly roofed. This has the effect of some of the noise being modeled vertically up into the sky rather than horizontally and amplified that way, which may have under-predicted the noise. And then critically, Jacaranda Gardens, our client site, wasn't modelled as a receiver. This is despite them being the closest southwestern neighbour, and as well as the noise predictions for their site being what looks to be up to 45 decibels, which wouldn't, on the face of it, comply with the nighttime noise regulations. This effectively means the panel doesn't have a reliable acoustic report that concludes compliance can be achieved. And while we appreciate the city's recommendation for condition 13, which effectively requires noise testing prior to occupation, this just defers the issue. Noise compliance must be established before approval, not after. And then finally, if the panel does still decide to approve the application, we would request that condition 13 be updated or an advice note added that specifies all the residential addresses where this compliance acoustic testing should be taken from. This is just because the current noise assessment doesn't include Jacaranda Gardens in where they've taken their testing, so we don't want it to be missed if that condition were added. And then, finally, on behalf of Bolton Clark, we do respectfully request the application be refused on the traffic and acoustic issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. Panel members, do you have questions of Mr. Parker? No? Oh, yes.
Yes, please. Mr. Parker, I have a few questions, if you don't mind. So, in relation to noise, isn't the car wash proposed to be largely positioned behind the service station? It doesn't have direct interface with Jacaranda Gardens.
So I think between where the existing service station building is and then the fences on either side, you've got I think it'll be roughly a 6 metre wide, because it's dual carriageway section where there is no fencing or no building. And that's roughly lines up with where the noise would be coming from the car wash.
So,
I think it's,
so wouldn't the car wash be shielded to a degree from Jacaranda Gardens by future development of Lot 2000?
Unless they're planning on moving where the driveway is, I would have thought that section would remain clear from any obstruction, because that's where the main cars are coming in on that Burnham Road crossover.
So there'd be, with future development, there'd still be the access way. But in terms of the interface that currently exists, I mean, the car wash is proposed to be set back behind the service station. And in future, there's going to be development on Lot 2000. So the current situation that exists there is not going to be like that forever. There is, apart from the access way, going to be no direct interface in the future between Jacaranda Gardens and the car wash. Is that the case?
Yeah, assuming it does get developed.
Okay. And then I'm keen to just explore with you, how do you think the perceived or potential impacts of this would compare with those of the land uses that are already approved for this site, like a tavern, consulting rooms and offices?
I haven't gone into detail on those other ones, so I can't.
Okay. You've also made a comment that this is a high turnover land use for a 24-hour land use, but do you honestly believe that it will be high turnover for all those 24 hours, or is it?
No, there will definitely be peaks and troughs in times, but then there'll likely be the normal peak hours, which I would imagine would align similarly with the service station ones as well, potentially.
So do you think it's fair to assume that in the later evening and middle of the night and early morning hours that this is not going to be a high turnover use?
I don't imagine it would be.
Okay. You've also made a statement in your submissions about the impact of increased traffic, and these are your words, on an intersection already known to fail. What do you mean by an intersection that fails?
So that's referring to when it essentially becomes a gridlock, and the residents have provided photos to the as part of our submission, our original submission, that documents the road in a gridlock state.
So is that in a gridlock state for a certain period of time? Because I mean, a lot of intersections, particularly in centres, get busy from time to time. Does that mean that they're failing, or does that just mean that they're busy from time to time?
I would argue the intersection's currently being designed to not at an adequate level for all this increase in traffic. And like when you've got cars halfway across the roadway because they can't move any further because they're blocked in front of them, they then block the traffic trying to pass through them, as well as all of the other driveways around them. So yeah, I would consider that a failing intersection for that period of time at least.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you. Follow up on that, I think that can I just on that traffic issue, can I just nail down where your principal concerns are? Because the Burnham Road, Nicholson Road intersection is a left in, left out intersection, so it's pretty efficient anyway by design. Where is the bottleneck there? Is it the Tuesday peaks trying to get into the service station, or what?
Yeah, so it's from all residents' accounts, it's always the Tuesday peak is the main bottleneck.
So it's actually the bit which is up Burnham Road from the entrance to the service station. Is that
correct? Yeah, correct. So it's where all the cars are exiting. So it's the only from this site. So
it's not the intersection itself which is the problem in your view.
No.
It's actually the entrance to the service station.
Correct. The entry exit point.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any further questions of Mr. Parker? If not, thank you. We may come back to you with other questions later. Mr. Stanio, speaking in support of the application, would you like to make your presentation? You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Presiding Member. Good morning, panel members. I'm the applicant of the motor vehicle wash proposed at 6 Burnham Road. I have available on Zoom Matt Moyle of Lloyd George Acoustics, available to answer any questions regarding technical acoustic matters. We reviewed the RAR and we're supportive of the city's recommendation for approval subject to conditions. The proposed motor vehicle wash will be co-located with an existing 24-hour service station, which was originally approved in 2018 as part of a much larger development that included a tavern, medical suites and offices. Traffic assessment for this proposal was refined during the DA assessment phase at the request of the city. On-site traffic counts were taken during the peak period of the service station, which they call the Tuesday cheap fuel day, although I don't think it's particularly cheap. The results of the traffic assessment not only show that the peak hour traffic generation of the car wash is very much at the lower end of the spectrum, 30 vehicles in the peak, but also that the overall assessed traffic impact is minor. The objectors referenced a 30% increase at the Burnham Road crossover, but when you extrapolate that, it equates to 3 extra movements, which is negligible. You wouldn't know whether they occurred or not. It also doesn't sound like they have really relied on much technical evidence in relation to that failing, if it's based on anecdotal photos, which we have taken. Lloyd George Acoustics have produced an environmental noise assessment, which is based on the correct and normal criteria and shows compliance is readily achievable at all nearby receivers. In this regard, we're supportive of the city's recommended conditions 12 and 13, which provide the security that noise recommendations are incorporated at practical completion, and also that the facility will comply prior to occupation. The car wash facility itself is very detached from sensitive receivers, being 75 metres from the Jacaranda Garden site with the service station in between. And the only direct sensitive interface is along the southeastern side where mitigation is being provided. The proposal will provide a needed automotive service complementing existing services available on site. And for these reasons, we consider the proposal to be worthy of the panel's approval, and we request the city's supported recommendation be adopted. Happy to answer any questions at the end of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Stanio. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Stanio, please? Councillors? No? Mr. Syme? Member Page?
Thank you. You did answer one of the questions I had now briefly during your deputation, but the other one, and you touched on the issue and that related to the traffic. So thank you for that. But on the issue of noise, the SLR peer review identified some issues and the city shared some of those concerns. Acknowledging that the city is recommending some conditions which would be the safeguards to ensure that this development needs to comply with the noise regs or it doesn't happen, right? But I just wanted your thoughts on, given there are concerns by both SLR and the city, how confident are you that if you remodel the noise with Jacaranda Gardens as a receiver and taking into account the issues raised by Mr. Parker, how confident are you and your noise consultant that the development would still comply, still be able to comply?
I understand your noise consultant is available.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I'll defer to Matt in a second. I'll just clarify. The comments of the city and the RAR relate to a different consideration with the acoustic assessment versus what SLR has come up with. So in the RAR, the city's health department had concerns with the noise generated by the vacuum units, and that was because we selected silenced vacuum units for the assessment. The reason that they were selected—
Sorry, just to clarify what silenced vacuum units are.
They're basically units that have silencing modules in them to reduce noise that's created, which is a very common feature of modern car wash facilities. So the reason that they were selected is because that's what's intended to be incorporated. It wouldn't be worth assessing a vacuum unit that's going to create a lot more noise that would require a lot more noise mitigation when you have silence units that are available. So Matt can speak more to that part of it, but in terms of the SLR objection, it was about Jacaranda Gardens not being included as a receiver. Matt can talk to this, but the reason that it wasn't included is because of its distance from the site and the fact that it's already shielded by the service station. I'll just defer to Matt now to speak to the effect of the modelling and where that 45 decibel noise contour actually comes from, because we're very, very confident that there wouldn't be any scenario where you might need physical mitigation down the track that would be different to what's being approved now. Matt, if you're available.
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, presiding members. Thank you for the question. Apologies, I think my video's not quite playing ball. But just in support of what Alessandro is saying, so yes, indeed, the Jacaranda Gardens dwellings were considered far enough away and also shielded by that service station such that they weren't identified as critical receivers. However, with any follow-up work occurring in that condition 12 and 13, there would be the need to verify at all positions, and that would include the Jacaranda Gardens. So yeah, rest assured that would then get carried on and picked up in those verification assessments. And so another thing to add is with those contour maps, they are generated as part of conservative modeling techniques. We do assume worst case, simultaneous operations, even though we're talking nighttime periods being most critical. So while those numbers may show one value, it's always going to be the conservative value. So that's where the verification becomes so important as part of that.
Any further questions?
Yeah, sorry, if I can just
Simon?
follow up on that. Your map on figure scenario one, figure 4.1 it is, shows a
Yep.
45 decibel line pretty much on the property boundary at Burnham Road. Is that the sort of confidence that we can take?
Well, that's, yeah, I appreciate the question. That's again a conservative estimate. We have not assumed anything on lot 2000 at that stage, because obviously we have no knowledge of what the development will comprise of. However, yeah, we're quite confident that with inclusion of future development in that area, as well as including once we do the verification assessment on site, a lot of those conservative assumptions, we're quite confident will net compliance when we actually go and measure out on site.
And where's the main noise source? Is it the car wash themselves, or is it the vacuum systems?
It is actually, and that's a very good question, the manual wash bays being nearest to the site, and obviously they don't have any doors on either side or anything like that. So typically the manual wash bays, and in this case as well, are the greatest noise contributors. So it is quite easy to mitigate those in terms of, controlling how they're used after hours, for example. So that
and
is
they're partly shielded anyway, aren't they?
They do. They have walls on the side, and yes, they are. The query about there being a roof or not, there is indeed a roof on the model. It's just something that didn't show up in the graphics. But yeah, we did, of course, model it with a roof.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I've just got one in terms of the vacuum bays. Should there be any problem with them, would there be a possibility of a wall on that little landscaped area between the vacuum bays and the manoeuvring area?
Well, looking more closely at the data relating to the vacuum, we've assumed a silence vacuum. As you can see in table 4.1, where we outline all the sources contributing to the overall noise level, the vacuums are at worst case positions, they're sort of 14 to 16 dB below that of the noise level from, say, the manual car wash elements. So there's quite a bit of headroom in terms of selecting those vacuums. Something wouldn't generally be considered to contribute to noise levels until it was sort of within 5 dB of the next highest level. So it's just something to note in the data itself. So silenced or not, we would definitely look at verification. Should any vacuum units be selected that are noisier, as long as they're not noisier by a given amount, they should still be okay.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you for that. We'll now move on to the council staff. Mr. Scambler, you're there? Yes, I can see you.
I am.
Okay, do you have any comment to make about the presentations before we ask you any questions?
Yeah, look, obviously our healthies had some similar issues that they wanted to raise regarding the acoustic report in terms of a couple of aspects of that. Once they've had a look through it in further detail, they were reasonably comfortable that, as Matt has pointed out, that the noise can be managed on the site. And hence, what we were effectively looking at is that they were pretty comfortable with the design of the buildings. So obviously, we've got the two conditions that cover one, confirmation that the recommendations of the acoustic report are constructed within the building, and that needs to be provided at the occupancy stage, that's confirmed that all of the recommendations are implemented at that stage via the building work. And then secondly, to ensure, and this comes down to, I guess, equipment selection of what's actually going into both the car wash areas and the vacuums, that that be certified. So effectively ground truthing what's been said in the acoustic report as being achieved is achieved once we get to that stage. And our health is comfortable and confident that that can be achieved.
Okay, thank you. What about the traffic issues? Are you
Look, our traffic engineers, once we had the amended and revised TIS come through, they reviewed that and they're comfortable that there's sufficient capacity within the road network to accommodate the additional traffic. I think the gridlock that has been talked about isn't specifically related to the road network itself, but comes down to driver behaviour. And it's how people actually enter and exit the site that becomes problematic, as opposed to the actual physical volume of traffic going in there. The site itself has sufficient and significant capacity to hold vehicles within it. I just think it largely comes down to how drivers are behaving within the site, and then also when they're exiting and entering that property. I don't actually think it's a failing of the road itself. I think it's a failing of how people are actually using that site. The modelling, our engineers are confident that there's more than sufficient capacity in the road network to accommodate the proposed number of vehicles. So,
thank you. Just to follow on, the intersection itself, is that slated for traffic lights?
Not at this stage, no.
Okay, thank you. Other panel members wish to? Councillors, have you any questions? Yes, Mayor Lyons.
Thank you. I know that the acoustics specialist, Matt, talked about how he would assure that Jacaranda House was included in the next testing when it comes back. But I wonder if are you confident that our conditions cover that will happen, or, through you, Chair, to the staff. Thank you.
Brendan?
Yeah, so the condition actually talks about nearest sensitive premises. For clarity, if the panel thought it was appropriate, you could potentially amend that condition to say all sensitive noise premises surrounding the development, to make that clear, or explicitly clear, that Jacaranda House should be included in that. As it currently is worded, it says nearest sensitive premises. So we would effectively ask that it includes everything, but if you want to make that explicitly clear, that condition could be altered in that manner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of council staff?
Yeah.
Yes, Member Payne. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah. Sorry, through Chair. Question for staff. Can I just confirm, from Burnham Road to Nicholson Road, can we turn both left and also right to Nicholson Road as well?
Yeah, so that's correct. So Nicholson Road out of Burnham Road, you can turn left and right.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Member Page.
Yes, Brenton, I'm trying to get my head around the previous approval. I struggled to find information about what that looked like. Given the service station has already been built and formed part of that original approval, can I assume that this is locked in, the validity of that earlier approval? And does that mean that the applicant could proceed with those other land uses at any point in time if nothing else is approved and constructed?
Potentially. Obviously, they've triggered the substantial commencement tranche of the approval. So I would think yes, that they would be able to do that on the basis that whatever they were wanting to develop was mirrored what was part of that original approval. I would think, yeah, they have sufficient approval to do so.
Okay, and because I don't know what that looked like. So what was proposed on the lot immediately south of the proposed car wash? So effectively on lot 2000 between Jacaranda Gardens and the car wash, what was proposed on that lot?
Oh, I haven't specifically gone back and looked at that approval for quite some time, but from memory, it was where the tavern and office buildings were located. So obviously, I guess whatever's developed in there would provide some additional acoustic shielding if that's what you were angling that question for.
Or generate its own noise, right?
Correct. It would do that also.
Okay. Can I just talk to you about some of the conditions? So condition 7 requires the finish of the boundary walls to be consistent with the remainder of the development prior to applying for a building permit. Does this condition rather require the action prior to occupation? I'm just mindful you can't construct the boundary wall prior to the building permit. So you're either asking for the details to be provided prior to the building permit or the wall to be finished.
We would be seeking the detail at the building permit stage that basically that's reflecting what's already been built.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then condition 10 requires waste and stormwater plans to be to the satisfaction of both yourselves and the Water Corp. But wouldn't it be more appropriate for the actions to be to your satisfaction upon the advice of Water Corp?
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, condition 11, why have you separated out one of the noise mitigation measures into condition 11 rather than just simply relying on condition 12, which requires compliance with all the requirements of the Lloyd George report?
So that was specifically requested from our coordinator of environmental health, and they were of the opinion that any beeping or tone indicating when it starts and stops would likely have that noise typically would carry. And so they had concern specifically around that. I mean, potentially that could be addressed through both condition 12 and 13 in any case. However, in their opinion, they specifically didn't want any audible external noise at the start and finish of any cycle.
Okay. Thank you. That's all from me. Thank you.
No further questions of the staff. Okay, well, thank you for that, Mr. Scambler. We'll now move into the item itself, and before we can discuss that, I will need a mover and seconder for the as published. Do I have a mover? Yes, Member Page. A seconder? Yes, Councillor Isler. Sorry, I don't know. Post. Okay, Member Page, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, please, Presiding Member. Before I speak to the substantive, though, I would like to move a couple of amendments, if I may.
Okay, fire away, Amendment 1.
The first amendment is to condition 7, which requires the finish of the boundary walls to be consistent with the remainder of the development. And I'd like to change the wording of that condition to read as follows. Prior to applying for a building permit, amended plans shall be provided to the city demonstrating that the standard of finish to the walls built up to boundaries will be consistent with the remainder of the development to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells. And I'll explain why further.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Yes, Member Syme.
Thank you. It's a minor thing, but it could cause issues through clearance, and Mr. Scambler has explained what the intent actually was. As it's currently worded, it requires the walls to be finished prior to a building permit, which isn't possible. What the city is actually requiring is amended details to prove that the walls will be finished to a standard that they are satisfied with, and then that will be implemented prior to occupation.
Thank you. Mr. Syme, you wish to?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Okay, any other member wish to speak to the amendment? If not, right of reply, no need. Okay, all those in favour of the amendment? Jones, that's unanimous. Thank you. So amendment 1 is carried unanimously.
Thank you. And then I would like to amend condition 10, which requires waste and stormwater plans to be to the satisfaction of both the City and Water Corporation. The amended wording should require the plans to be to the satisfaction of the city upon the advice of the Water Corporation.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Yes, Mr. Symes, second.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, the reason again, simply it's not appropriate and could be problematic for clearance of a condition to be partly or wholly to the satisfaction of the third party. The city is the clearing authority, and when they clear this condition, they'll do so upon the advice of the Water Corp.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Symes used to speak a second.
Yes, look, briefly, yes, I agree that the city is the clearing authority and should be an advice, not an unapproved authority.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak to that amendment? No, I'll put the amendment. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, presiding member. I will support the recommendation for approval of this application. I'm of the view a local centre is an appropriate location for a car wash, especially when it forms part of an existing 24-hour service station and will use existing crossovers. It meets all the applicable requirements of the planning scheme, even though one of the boundary walls exceeds the length of the deemed to comply standards of the codes. The city has provided a sound explanation as to why this wall does not cause an issue for neighbours and how the proposed wall meets the relevant acceptable outcomes of the codes. I'm also satisfied from the assessment and explanation provided in the city's report that there is adequate on-site parking to service this facility. I note the concerns about noise, but I don't think, and we have seen similar car washes come before us before, I don't think the proposed use is of a nature and intensity to cause undue amenity impacts to neighbours. It's located on an intersection of two roads which generate their own traffic noise and in an area where there already are and will include other non-residential uses in the future, which will also generate their own noise. The car wash is also proposed to largely be positioned behind the service station and would be shielded to a degree from nearby residential development by future development on the adjoining vacant lots. I note that some of the city shared some of the submitters' concerns about the traffic impact statement, but that they survived it, the one that was originally submitted, but that they're satisfied with the amended modelling and TIS that has subsequently been provided. And that amended TIS concludes that the overall development can operate within safe and acceptable traffic levels during peak times, and I'm satisfied with those conclusions. By virtue of its operational arrangements and physical site constraints, a car wash development can't accommodate more customers than those which can queue and park. And the numbers of cars entering and exiting the site are arguably less than what could occur if the site was developed in accordance with the approval it currently has, or if it was more intensively developed for something else. And that can happen in a local centre. So I am satisfied that this application is appropriate for the site in question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Islam has seconded. You wish to speak to the item.
No, Chair, thank you very much. I think the Deputy Chair has covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members wish to speak to the item? Mayor Lyons?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for those previous amendments. Fully agree with them and agree with all of the conditions here. But however, I would like to move an amendment on 13, condition 13, and that is to delete the words the nearest and add in all. So it includes all noise sensitive properties in the surrounding area. And I'll take a seconder on that and I can speak to one.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Islam, seconder. Mayor Lyons, speak to the item.
Thank you. And I do note that there is buffers in place and that this is probably not going to be an issue, but I do want to give the residents in Jacaranda House some sort of level of satisfaction, that's something that to make sure that they are included in the noise monitorings for this. And I think it's only fair that we add that in. We've heard from the acoustic specialist to say that it will be included. So I think this just makes that formal in this. So they've got a level of confidence that they will be considered in this. We do have another, and I don't want to compare to another place in the city where we've got a car wash, but I will, because we have numerous complaints about this particular car wash. And I would hope this technology is a bit different, and I just don't want to see that happening again because we haven't included those other things in this situation.
Thank you. Councillor Islam has seconded. Do you wish to speak to the item? Any other member wish to speak to it? Just so we're clear, it's in the second last line that it's after the noise regulations 1997. The wording will be at all noise sensitive properties to the satisfaction of the city. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further speakers. I'll put the amendment. All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Lyons, you wish to continue?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wishing to speak? Yes.
Oh, look, extremely briefly, this is clearly an appropriate use for this site. Logical next to a 24-hour service station as part of a local centre. I think that the traffic and noise issues which arise out of this have been satisfactorily addressed, and we've discussed them in now a fair bit of detail. So I think we can do this now fairly easily.
Thank you. And I'll just summarise some of my points in terms of the variations to site setbacks and height of wall. That's been covered. I'm supportive of that. Parking, it's all appropriate. Signage, the council have supported the signage. Noise, I'm supportive of the conditions that have been imposed, and also note that in the evenings the wash bays have auto doors operational, and traffic and access have all been covered. So I'm supporting the application as well. Therefore, I'll move back to the mover. The item to include.
Thank you.
Nothing further. All right, I'll put the recommendation as amended with conditions. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. The item on the agenda, which is item 3.2. So those that are making presentations, thank you, Mr. Sanya. We have one presenter on this item today, Mr. Watson, and Matt Elliott from the court property questions from the panel if required. So the application is for lot 99 Caulfield Street, Gosnells, proposed childcare premises. Mr. Watson, would you like to make your presentation, please? You have only 3 minutes.
Thank you, presiding member, panel members. Being supported the proposed 104 Place Childcare Centre from Caulfield Street in Gosnells. Yes, I have Matt Elliott, who is from a core property, who will be available to answer questions on the presentation. We're pleased to see the recommendation for approval today, and I'd like to thank Brenton and the team at the City for their planning assessment and recommendation to the panel. The proposed development is an attractive and functional facility for the community, which is clearly demonstrated by the City's RAR and recommendation before us today. The proposed development is also supported by the necessary traffic, acoustic, drainage, technical assessments, and these have all been reviewed by the City staff and confirmed. Panels received my presentation summary, and I won't go through those verbatim, but in short, we're supportive of the general suite of conditions proposed by the City's officers. But we do, however, request some changes to 3 conditions. Firstly, removal of condition 13 regarding further signage approval, modification to condition 4 regarding seeding of land for road widening, modification to condition 15 regarding the fencing modifications. I'll talk to condition 14 and 15 in more detail today, but happy to answer any more questions or go into detail regarding any of the other matters or the development as a whole following my presentation. In relation to condition 14 for the road widening, the design has factored in the other regional road reservation. We simply request the utilisation of this land for the design as an interim measure. We have proposed an alternate solution for this land to be set aside as a separate lot for future acquisition. This is a logical and commonly used approach for these types of matters and circumstances like this. We're not proposing any key structures in this land. We've simply got landscaping, car parking and some signage. Caulfield Street has already been upgraded, with the road reservation widening varied along a number of different lots that front the street. We feel this approach proposed in our presentation is logical and ensure the reservation is there for the taking when required, but it also allows for the functional use of the land. Moving forward into condition 15 in relation to fencing, we understand the intent of the condition and reasons behind it. We do request modifications to reflect a more suitable outcome for the balance and its location. The side and rear fencing we have proposed aligns with the acoustic recommendations in relation to the overall material and height. The fencing will also be adjacent to other residential properties and future residential being on the northern side. And this is an appropriate interface to have the type of fencing we have proposed. The requirement to have a change in height and change in material to masonry fencing is unnecessary and will add significant cost to the overall project. In relation to the Caulfield Street frontage fencing, it is important that we strike the right balance between the operational requirements and also the privacy of the children, and also that interface to the street. The inclusion of some visual permeability, as outlined in my presentation summary, I think does present a good balance. The design is still required to meet the necessary acoustic requirements. So any visual permeable component still requires Perspex panels behind it to ensure that the fencing is gap-free. So as you appreciate, this is a significant cost contribution to have that if it was the whole extent, but also there's the privacy elements as well. This is a regional road and we understand and acknowledge the intent. So we think that the option we've put forward strikes that right balance. So to conclude today, we're supportive of the officer assessment and the recommendation put forward to the panel today. We request those modifications to condition 13, 14, 15 and happy to answer any questions of the panel today.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Panel members, any questions of the presenter? Councillors? No? Okay. Yes. Paige.
I'm trying to get my head around your concerns about the fencing. So I struggled when I looked at some of the elevations and the plans to link what, particularly that bathroom that you're concerned about, what that opening type is. So what is it's not a door, is it? It's a window. And what is the sill height of that window?
It's like a glass window.
Yes.
So you can see fully into those bathrooms and you can see on the floor that the partition where the toilet is like right there. And it's just that little bit.
How high is that sill, do you think?
It's sorry, I might
jump in.
Full length. So modern day sort of operators want as much passive surveillance in and out of the building as possible. So the window sort of on the door going externally from the bathroom will be a full height glass window.
Is that a requirement of other regulations?
I'm not sure whether it's necessarily a department regulation requirement, but it's a preference from the operators due to the size of the children, I suppose, being able to see in and out of the building.
I just want to explore that a little bit more, and this might sound a bit silly, but it's the only way I can, because I was trying to imagine this, right? So given the size of those little people, and remembering when my kids were at daycare long time ago, those toilets were very little as well, right? So I'm struggling. You've also got landscaping on the inside of the fence, and you've got carers that need to, if they need to see into the toilet, then it means they're outside. So I'm struggling to understand the strength of the concern about people walking or driving past and being able to see into that bathroom. And I'm trying to weigh that up against the aesthetics of this development and the fencing you propose. I'm not entirely sure what that fencing will look like. You've talked about white pickets, and then you've talked about what is the fencing that you've proposed in your information that you sent through to us recently. What is it going to look like? And honestly, for people walking past or driving past, are they honestly going to be, I understand if it's a full length window, and I don't think it needs to be, but are they honestly going to be able to at a glance see into that bathroom, and therefore at the expense of a well-designed development, we've got to have this patchwork fence to prevent something that may not actually be an issue.
Yeah, so probably a couple of points there, and I'll go through our sort of rationale and understanding of why we've gone to where we have. So the staff that are operating the facility will be working outside, so they want to have their clear sight lines of students, because there's a ratio of children, there's a ratio of staff to children. So that's the intent, and it just allows for operational flexibility for where staff are and the kids. So having that glass the whole way is a really important aspect for their operation. In terms of the fencing to the street, it's one of their, I suppose, concerns. And you don't want to say that there's dodgy people around just looking in at a childcare centre, but that's what their concern is that they don't want someone just walking along and I can see a kid going to the toilet. That's their biggest concern. So what we've tried to do, and with our client and the operator needs and requirements, is that they want to have a bit of a cone of vision to that, that stops that from ever happening, because they don't want to have someone just stand there looking at a child going to the toilet. So from a planning perspective, what we're trying to work through is, all right, well, how can we have some visual permeability potentially that is outside of that to enable a good fencing design, but also operational characteristics and wants and needs. So what we've proposed is some picket tile fencing that goes from ground to the top, that can break up the existing fencing that we've got. We're not, and this is where we've just put an option in the package today, but we're also open to having some visual permeability, but not for the whole way. And
materials, what are we looking at?
Yeah, so current fencing is a colour-bond fence, but we've looked at a picket tile style fence. It's like
a pool fencing as such,
yeah,
with sort of like thin slats,
yep,
vertically, and then that's backed by acoustically treated material.
And do you think that a colour-bond fence for a front fence in a residential area is good enough?
This is where we're looking at the design as well. This is another regional road. It's a regional road carrying traffic, and there's actually it's not, I'd say, lower order road where there's a lot of open fencing style. So what you find on these more major roads is you actually have long blank fencing to separate between the use and the, especially where it's not like a commercial development that has the key frontage to it. This is almost like a side elevation. So we've tried to strike that balance between what type of road it is as well as what the interface is as well.
And if I'm sorry.
So can I just, and I'm going to,
yeah,
I'm happy. So why would colour-bond? I understand the cost issue.
Yep.
I'll debate that later. That's not an issue for me. But the materials. So I understand what you're saying about permeability and non-permeable bits, but why colour-bond? Why does the fact that it's on another regional road mean colour-bond is more acceptable in a residential zoned area than a front fence that is masonry with some infill pickets?
We've just chosen the fencing that is, I suppose, consistent in a residential side boundary fence is pretty common against a regional road. But we're also we can look at different options for that fencing. We're not needs to be colour-bond the whole way, but we're also balancing up those cost differentials. Masonry walls are very expensive. There can be other materials that can be used to go, all right, well, it can not be like a colour-bond fence, but there's other materials that you've probably seen on childcare centres that we could look at. Masonries are just a very costly aspect.
Look, and on that, we see childcare centres with solid fencing to manage noise.
Yeah.
But we've seen others where the fencing is completely open, palisade type fencing with a lot of vegetation that screens. So that's why I'm struggling with this fence issue a bit. It doesn't have to be an unattractive front fence to deal with the issues that say it may be present.
What we're dealing with this site as well, and the acoustic assessment, is we've got state planning policy 5.4 for regional roads. So we've done an assessment against that, as well as the environment and noise assessment of the noise generated from our development on surround. So we're balancing the two noise aspects. And the 5.4 assessment confirmed that we need a 2.4 metre solid structure. And we actually need some aspects within our ceiling and glass as well for noise. So that's the difference as well. We can't have it. So wherever we do have a permeable element, we need to then balance that with perspex panels as well. So that's what we're sort of pursuing.
I'll follow up on this precise. And I don't mean to be impolite, but is this design fully resolved? I mean, you've got a very sensitive use within a building which requires surveillance from outside. Outside of that, you then got a landscape plan which has got lawn, which you're then wanting to screen with a fence, which is we're finding out now is really unspecified. There's a lot of thinking that hasn't been done around this area, it seems to me. Are we fully resolved here? Do we need to go back and really have a proper think about this?
I think that the plan is very well resolved. It's very common for these play spaces to be used in that front setback area.
Yeah, but it's not that. It is you've got a particular requirement, which you're resolving in a particular way, which you can do it in other different ways. You know, with landscape, the format of the landscaping is quite flexible. You can use landscape as part of the thing, but you're not actually doing that. Now, why is that, for example? There's a set of resolutions that you might be looking at, but in this case, you're not. You're putting the most difficult solution with a bit of lawn in front of it, which invites viewing, if you like, from whatever angle, where there are different options that would have been available to you. Why is that? Why are we at that position now?
I think the option that's been done back a second.
Can I just mention, I've never heard of toilets with clear glass. I mean, is there no privacy for the user of those toilets?
So that's where I'll jump on this question first. It's the staff having visibility into those spaces because they've got 10 children per thing to look at. So they have the opportunities to see where all kids and what they're doing.
But you've put the most active of active spaces right outside that window.
And you've got 3 toilets to do the same thing.
This design of a floor plan for a childcare centre is very consistent with a lot of childcare centres that you'll see.
It may well be, and as I say, I don't mean to be impolite, but you've put the most active of active play spaces, that is the lawn area, right outside this most sensitive area. There's something unresolved in that to me.
So what we've got here is we've actually got the younger children on this side. So the older children are on the other side. So what you find with a lot of these spaces here is it's more of the, I suppose, changing nappies and that sort of thing and that space, but there is still a couple of toilets there. The more active space is probably on the other side. So we have chosen where the older kids and the younger kids are going. What we're unresolved about is the fencing. We, during the assessment of the application, didn't have any correspondence from the city to say they had some concerns. So what we know is that we can probably work through a fencing design as a detailed design. We're open to that. I think in terms of the floor plan layout and functionality of this facility, it's very optimised and works well.
But that's fine. The floor plan might be one thing, but the landscape response to it doesn't really work with it, does it?
You're talking about the outdoor play.
Talking about the outdoor play area.
Yeah, and I think
where you've got the most active of active spaces, that is the lawn area, right outside your most sensitive window.
I think that can be resolved as well. We got the landscaping condition there. Like we've put a concept plan for a play space design. We can modify and look at that. a lot of those plans aren't fully resolved at DA stage anyway. Like most of the development applications.
Oh, you've got a
for
pretty
these.
advanced landscape plan here.
Yeah.
You would expect to have something which is a bit, definite about what we're going to see in the future.
Well, with play spaces, they're often not determined until detailed design. So that's why I'd say 50% of the childcare applications we've lodged, we haven't done a play space design. So we've done it in this circumstance, and we're open to modifying that and playing with that if need be. These are all, because what often happens is sometimes with these childcare centres, the operator isn't confirmed at the DA stage. That's what we had here, and this is what the preferences have been for them. But we're open to looking at that play space design to modify it slightly, also the fencing design. Working through that at detailed design.
I'm just still concerned that you've got toilets with glass walls that you can see into. I mean, this property will back onto residential properties, and anybody could stand on a chair or whatever and just look in at children going to toilets. I just can't understand why that's a requirement. I don't think I've seen, or certainly all the applications I've looked at, it's never been drawn to the attention that there is glass walls for toilets. So, sorry.
It's one of those probably detailed design aspects that, as we've got an operator, it's pretty common that they sightline.
Does the shower also have glass wall to it? It's you got a similar type of
Shower.
Well, yes, there's another toilet with a shower in it.
Yeah, no, so that's a wall on that side.
So a wall, is it?
And then you've got the door.
Sorry, I haven't got the detailed design up at the moment. Okay.
To be just clear though, that I was talking about just the door when it comes to the full length glass. So the rest of the wall is solid wall. It's just the insert into the door.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit clearer.
Yeah. It's sort of Josh's comment on that sort of cone of vision on that glass door.
Right. Any further questions?
Yes, thank you. I have a question.
Yes, Mayor Lyons. Sorry, I didn't.
I'm really confused by this as well. I've been to quite a few early learning centres in our city, and I've not seen this sort of thing where you can have a glass looking into an area like this. And I'm also just a little bit confused. Sorry, I'm not a planner as such, but on this plan, it looks like there's a door there. You want to get rid of the door and put a full length glass panel. Is that what you're saying?
So the door is glass, so you can see through the door.
But then you just walk straight into where the toilets are. Is that right?
Correct. So it's like it's like a front door of a house that you can sort of see through. That's what the door would.
So this is for like 0 to 2-year-olds, this area that you're talking about. And wouldn't a staff member go with a 0 to 2-year-old to the toilet? Why would they be on the outside observing on the inside?
So you've got some kids playing outside, some I suppose going inside. You have some children of that age that can go to the toilet independently, the staff are mixed in between outdoor and indoor areas.
I think, look, at the end of the day, it's a preference for operators. Like I said, I don't think it's a department regulatory requirement. So if that was something that we needed to frost it or make it half height windows, it is definitely a discussion we can have with the operators. I'm sure that would prefer to sort of have the centre be approved versus fighting on the full length glass windows. So we'd be happy.
My question, sorry, hadn't finished before you went into your explanation. This all ties into you wanting a non-visible permeable fence all the way along there, which is questionable to start with. But I honestly do not know of a 2-year-old that is in someone else's care that you would just let go to the toilet by themselves so that you could watch them from the outside. It's very strange to me. And I just feel like this design is a little bit bizarre, to say the least. And it all ties back into the fencing as well, as to why you want this glass panel and you want the fencing. So for me, it all ties in together. So if you've got anything further to add to that, I'm not sure, but I see you want to move on from this section, but that's my concerns at this stage.
I think one thing I'll just add is that this key design of the floor plan, play spaces and the like is very consistent with a lot of childcare designs. So we're not going beyond anything here. This is, as Matt said, just a criteria from the operator that we have detailed, and we have the opportunity here to have the operator at this early DA stage. So we're trying to convey that as early as we can, so that it's confident to decision makers of what our intent is. But as Matt said, we can look at that if necessary and take that back. But I think from a substantive perspective, the overall design and development and approval of this childcare centre is the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. Any
Just
further?
one last thing on that before we move on. So what is the change in level between
Yes.
the floor level of looking at the plan now, it's not awfully clear, but
Yeah.
you've got the levels of the outdoor play area versus the footpath, or versus the footpath. I'm trying to understand what the difference in level.
I'm just going to go against the elevation, and we are probably looking about half a metre, I would say.
Because you talk about the fact you can't retain trees. Well, I think the city gave us some information that you can't retain the 2 jarrah trees because there was about a metre of earthworking that needed to occur. So if you're raising the level of that area to a level above the footpath, to the degree that you need some retaining, I'm assuming, from the plans, then again, I'm going to, and I'll for the last time, because I won't do it I'm going to, especially what you have said about the fact that actually it's a door with some solid bits on the side. I'm trying to understand what the actual degree of visibility would be from somebody driving past on another regional road, so it's not a slow meandering, let's park outside here, or somebody walking on that footpath would have direct line of sight to 2 small toilets located behind a wall through a door at a very, understand how big it is.
Half a metre below.
That's right. That would justify a front fence that is unacceptable in my view. So
I think definitely cars driving past, completely out of the question. It's the pedestrian walking past in that way, and it's probably walking, westerly direction towards Caulfield Street, because the site goes like that and it comes down like that, so the retaining increases. And so it's more that if there is an odd opportunity, someone's standing there and they could see it. So,
which I will counter during debate, because I don't think that'll happen with the landscaping you've got on the inside of that fence.
And the height of this. As a follow-up, how high is that front fence proposed to be?
2.4 metres, and the condition requested that over 1.2, it's visually perfect.
So up to 1.2, and you've got half a metre.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So your footpath is about half a metre below the floor level, the bottom of the fence.
Yep.
The fence above that at 1.2, so you've already got 1.7 before you've got permeability.
Yep.
And then above that, you've got another, what is it, up to 2.4. You've got this enormous, you've got razor wire on top of it. I mean, you've got this enormous fence there,
Yep.
which is above normal height, more visible height. Well, we usually use 1.6 as being the cutoff point for visibility. You're already up there anyway. So what additional benefit are we getting from this towering fence above us?
We're not.
Why is it so high?
Well, it's so high because of the acoustic. So that's, and it's on the notion of the SPP 5.4.
But the acoustics, which way are the acoustics going? From the road to the thing, or
So we've already got 0.5 metre of sound barrier anyway, haven't we?
Because of the retaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why do we need 2.4 on top of that?
That's what the modelling has shown.
Okay.
And we also need some glass and it is a very robust and conservative report. So we're just doing what we've been guided by a technical consultants to do.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on this?
Yes, I've got another one just on levels. You've got about a metre drop, it seems to me, from the road to the car park level.
Yep.
Where are you dealing with that drop? Is that on the first 6 metres of entrance? So you've got a sort of a 1 in 6 slope there. Is that what we're assuming?
I think that's correct. What we've got is the site is very low.
Yes.
The roads are built up against it. And what we've tried to do is have the childcare centre all at one level.
Yeah.
Just for
fine, but at the entrance,
yep,
the car park entrance,
yep,
you've got about a metre drop from the road and footpath level down to the site.
Yep.
How is that dealt with? Is that in the ramp going down to the?
Pretty much the ramp going down from the road.
So it's not dealt with in the public spaces, but dealt with internally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, no further questions? All right, we'll now move on to council staff. Scambler, do you have any queries or comments to make, sorry, regarding the discussion to date regarding the fencing and yes, only the fencing. Sorry,
Yeah, I guess.
Councillor Islam, did you wish to say something or? Oh, sorry, okay. Sorry, Brenton, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Look, so obviously the city have for a very, very long time had provisions in our previous town planning scheme that covered the quality of fencing that interfaces between a commercial land use, of which a childcare centre is, and a residential land use. And that requirement under our previous town planning scheme was basically a 2 metre masonry or other similar material fence. Obviously, we've moved to our new town local planning scheme number 24. That provision isn't contained in our scheme anymore. However, it's reflected in a local planning policy. So that as far as the standard of fence is concerned as being masonry, we do allow a variation to, we're not purely wed to masonry. Hence in the condition it talks about other similar material. We've been open to modular style fencing. If cost is an issue, obviously the modular fencing brings that down, but still gives a very good appearance in terms of aesthetics and amenity. When we've looked at the fence, obviously, 2.4 colour bonds on top of a 500 mil to up to a metre retaining wall. On that frontage, we felt that it was excessive and it did not provide a very good interface with the public realm. Noting, however, that there is landscaping to be installed in the Caulfield Street section of the lot that's contained within the MRS other regional road. So it will be softened. However, the combination of a 2.4 metre high fence plus a retaining wall we thought was not a good amenity outcome. Hence, we went with the condition requiring VIS-PERM fencing above 1200. I note that the applicants raised issues about surveillance, but our position was effectively where the panel got to, in that you already have effectively 300 mil to 500 mil up to a metre of retaining, and then you'll have a 1200 fence that's solid on top of that. So in terms of then any issues around visual surveillance, that falls away, particularly from on the outside of the site looking in. However, it allows for the visual surveillance from the inside of the site looking out. And we felt that was a good, effectively a good striking a good balance between ensuring that the kids have enough, I guess, security around, hearing eyes, but also met the requirements of providing a higher quality and a better amenity interface as far as that was concerned. But as far as the standard of fence, the city has consistently applied that on commercial developments in residential zones or interfacing residential zones for at least since the early 2000s. So it's something that we are pretty keen to continue on with.
Okay. Any further questions of the officers?
Please.
Councillors? Yes, Councillor Islam.
I've got a question through you, Chair. First question is, from the presentation we heard, they are requesting to remove condition number 13. From the city or from the staff, is there any risk of removing this condition? You can see.
So the only, unfortunately, the city standard, we have a standard condition around signage that is usually applied in instances where we don't get all of the signage detail. Now, in this instance, there is a sign that's proposed to be located within an area of the other regional road reserve that is a portion of this site. Effectively, the comments from DPLH had said that there's to be no permanent structures within the other regional road reserve boundary, of which the signage is located. However, they did note that landscaping and car parking were acceptable. So really that condition relates to the sign that's located on the truncation, and that would need to be effectively relocated. And obviously we didn't have the detail as part of this application. So it would need to be addressed at a later stage for that particular sign. The other signs were fine. So I would, rather than potentially delete the condition, I'd maybe suggest that it be modified to specifically exclude the signage located on the property truncation. But the other signage was fine and we were comfortable with that, and it complies with our planning framework.
Can I follow with that precise point? Just so I could follow up on that precise point a bit tangentially. If we were to agree with the applicant regarding condition 14,
yes,
which in their view would then, in their suggestion, would require removal of all structures when required, that would actually cover that concern on condition 13, presumably, because the sign would have to go at the same time.
Yes, presumably.
Yep. Okay.
However, if you would like to discuss condition 14, I'm happy to do so as well, because I have some information around that.
We probably need to.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up on the sign? So does that sign that you're talking about on the fence in the ORR, does that comply with your policy?
It would comply with the policy. It would comply with the policy, yes.
It's only the removal of it which is the issue.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and also the department's position that they don't want any permanent structures within that that reserve.
And would you consider signage to be permanent? Any more permanent than car parking?
Well, I mean, it's a structure within the ground. They mentioned structures, so I would say that be pretty permanent until it's not, i.e. it would need to be removed for it to not be permanent.
Okay, can we quote you on that?
Can I ask a question about fencing?
Question on fencing from member Page. Yes.
Brenton, just in terms of the fencing and hearing what we've heard already today, and I acknowledge you've got your planning policy, but in terms of pragmatic compromise, what would your view be if we were to look at amendments to delete the first part of condition 15 to allow the side and rear fencing, or the the rear fencing to be colour bond like any other residential property, as long as it complies with that noise management plan requirement for certain specifications, and then require the higher quality fencing on the street boundaries. But instead of actually working out right this minute what it should look like and where the panel should be and what the material should be, leaving it to the city to work out and simply requiring that those front fences achieve the acceptable outcomes of the R codes to your satisfaction, because that would allow you and the applicant to go away and have a more detailed look at what that would look like, and you resolve what that looks like in terms of where a panel goes, but requiring a higher quality fence on the street boundary. How would you feel about amendments that achieve those outcomes?
I wouldn't be too happy on the removal of the internal fences. It's something that we've consistently, and the DAP have consistently applied as well, I might add. And we've had this similar discussion on numerous applications in the past. The requirement for a masonry fence internal is basically it's twofold. It does obviously achieve acoustic, but it also provides a higher level of amenity for those people that are interfacing with commercial land users. Like I said, it's been a pretty well received, not always from the operators, but it's very much well received from residents that are adjoining those kinds of developments. Again, we're not specifying that it has to be brick. There's enough, I guess, flexibility built into that condition that if they came to us with an alternative design that wasn't colour bond, or it was a modular construction, there's a range of different materials that the city have considered and approved over the years. We're happy to have those discussions. And again, as it comes back to Caulfield Street, we do feel that the amenity outcome of a 2.4 metre high colour bond fence on top of a retaining wall of varying height was very much substandard. And we're happy to have those discussions, and hence we feel that there's enough flexibility built into the conditions as they currently stand to allow those conversations to be had. One, to address the requirements of the acoustic report, but then also address the city's concerns as far as amenities concerned.
So are you saying your interpretation of or similar material in clause 10 is pretty broad?
Sorry, what was
your interpretation of, when the clause says of masonry or similar material, in your view, or similar material can cover a fairly broad range of solutions?
Correct.
Okay. Can I just, and again, I'll just push a little bit on that. I understand it's in your policy, and other DAPs might have approved it, but I'm trying to think in a practical sense, if this site was developed with group dwellings or others, from the neighbour's perspective, this is what difference does it make? As long as the noise is being managed, from the neighbour's perspective, what difference is there between a residential or a mixed use or another development and a childcare centre, which is a very common non-residential land use in a residential area? So I understand your policy says it needs to not be colour bond or it needs to be masonry or similar, but I'm trying to understand in a practical sense, what difference does it make? As long as it is consistent with the established residential character, which I would suggest colour bond is, and as long as it manages the noise, is it simply then just about enforcing a policy for policy's sake, or am I missing something?
No, I think it's about a level of amenity that's afforded between what is a commercial land use and versus a residential land use. Of course, I take the point that if it was developed for group dwellings or other residential development, then a colour bond fence would be fine. But you'd be sharing that with a neighbour. You wouldn't be sharing it with a commercial operator of a site that you may know, you may not know.
But in terms of amenity, so you talked about amenity. So amenity is formed by a number of things, right? So noise, and other things. So if those other things are addressed, so noise is addressed, there's no overlooking, then what is the amenity impact or not of a colour bond fence versus in this case?
I guess it would be.
Oh, Brendan, can I just query what the existing fence there is along that back boundary? Maybe the applicants can advise. I don't have any photos, I don't think, of the fencing type. But if it's an existing colour bond fence there.
Yeah, I'd say it's an existing colour bond fence.
Yeah, I mean, they're reasonably new dwellings. There's about 3 or 3 and a bit fencing, colour bond fencing. All we're going to be doing is replacing colour bond fence with a colour bond fence. But the colour bond fence that's going to be there is probably going to be a bit higher, and it will be. The
fence, the actual fence itself will be removed, and a sizable retaining wall installed along that boundary in any case. I guess, and then the fence, the required fencing would be installed on top of that.
Sit on top of that, so it'll be greater than, I mean, it might still be 1.8, but effectively, because of the retaining wall on the boundary, because we're going to be building this site up.
Correct. So in that location, so where it adjoins 184 Caulfield, which is the adjoining neighbour, it's about roughly about 1 metre is what's shown on the plan now in that location. As it runs down the site further back, I guess along the Dorothy Street internal boundary, that retaining wall height gets significantly higher. In the very back corner, going off their plans, it looks to be about 1.5-ish. That's if you look at the level of 19.4 versus a level of 17. Oh, actually, it's actually 1.8, 1.9 metres in the very back corner. So,
but there's no development. The only fence we're talking about is the rear boundary, isn't it? There's nothing on Dorothy Street.
Yeah, so the rear boundary fence, I guess, is it adjoins the
unit site
184 next door, which is the 178, which is the adjoining property. That in the very back corner as you run along the boundary, the shared boundary with 178, going off of the site plan, you're looking at roughly a 1.8 metre high retaining wall at the worst point.
So can I just go back to the previous question that sort of reinforces my feeling on this? So currently you've got these dwellings there and there's a colour bond fence. So you introduce this new land use, which can be managed impact-wise in certain ways. So those amenity impacts are mitigated. And you're insisting that, and because of acoustics, that colour bond fence be replaced by a retaining wall, a sizable retaining wall in some aspects, plus extra masonry on top of that. And that is going to make a massive difference in terms of amenity to the neighbour versus a significant retaining wall and an existing colour bond fence that they have at the minute. I'm just trying to, that amenity argument I'm struggling with. How would amenity be significantly altered because the fence is masonry and not colour bond?
Look, in this specific scenario, it may not. I didn't realise in that back corner that the retaining wall level was quite that high. As far as amenity, by the time you put a 1.7 or 1.8 metre high retaining wall in that location, the fencing matter in that specific section probably falls away a little bit, because as you're sitting probably in that backyard of that property, your eye level is going to be at the wall for the most part, as opposed to looking up to what a colour bond fence is. But it's about providing a higher quality and standard of development as well, noting that it's a commercial use as opposed to a residential land use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of Councillor Islam?
Yeah, sorry, through Chair, I've got a couple of questions. It's in relation to there were 10 objections from residents, and the objections related to one was oversupply of childcare around the area, and the other one was about the loss of I think the trees around that. I note that this concerns don't appear to be in the report. Through you, Chair, can I get a response from the staff if you can provide if there is any oversupply of childcare or how many childcare facilities around the area, or if there is a prevention for the loss of trees, things like this, please?
So in regards to the provision of childcare centres, the planning framework doesn't consider that. We don't get into whether or not there's an oversupply and therefore someone couldn't develop a childcare centre in any particular location. We've got numerous examples throughout the city of Gosnells where we've got childcare centres on almost competing corners. It's not a consideration in the planning framework. Anecdotally, if you looked at it, if there was an oversupply, the applicant probably wouldn't be proposing a childcare centre in this location. They obviously there's a demand for the service, and obviously they put an application in for that. In terms of the protection of vegetation on the site, we've covered that off in the report. Given the level differences across the site and the need for retaining and the need for earthworks, the opportunities for them to be able to retain existing trees are limited. When we've had a look through the site, there's basically less than half a dozen trees that are endemic and native to the locality. And some of those aren't in the best condition in any case. So the retention of those is going to be very difficult, and there is no statutory requirement for them to retain them on the site in any case.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Syme.
Yes, can we talk about condition 14, please? Currently, as it's worded, well, two things. First of all, currently as it's worded, there's no time frame on that as to whether it's when it's required or whatever. I understand that we now have a plan which shows the extent of what that might be from both the applicant and from you. So the actual boundaries of those, I think, are now defined well enough. There's no timing on that in condition 14, and the question also is twofold. What are the specific heads of power that would allow this to be done free of cost? And also, how do we link need and nexus to this particular development?
So the head of power, obviously, the land's reserved under the MRS.
Yes.
The city, the commission also have DC policy 1.7, which is general road planning, which covers off on the requirement for the seeding of road reserves and road widening. And that's now looking to be potentially replaced by draft operational policy 112. And it specifies, I guess, the process and outlines the process for where road widening may be required. If it's required under a region scheme, operational policy 112 is pretty clear in that a decision maker may require land for road widening be ceded free of cost as a condition of either subdivision or DA. There is a subdivision which is currently afoot across the site, which is also showing the seeding of the MRS of the Regional Road Reserve. When we've considered the development application itself, obviously there's a couple of triggers. So the subdivision may never go ahead. It may go ahead, and in which case the condition on the DA falls away. If the DA goes ahead and the subdivision doesn't, there's no, I guess, the other mechanism then to ensure that land that's required for the road reserve is given up at any other stage. So the trigger is the development or subdivision of the land, and to ensure that we've got that covered in both respects, it either occurs via the subdivision or occurs via the DA. So the head of power is the MRS. The land's reserved. In fact, the reserve itself and the road itself's already been upgraded, and what we've got in this location is a reserve width that is not commensurate with the standard and hierarchy of that road. So if you look at the aerial photograph, you'll see that basically the reserve width itself is quite narrow as it adjoins the property, and from the edge of the pavement to the boundary is about 3 metres.
So if that's the case, why are we allowing development on it?
So the actual development itself, whilst it's not entirely clear via the plan, where you see the landscaping which is proposed along Caulfield Street, the section of landscaping is actually the width of the other regional road reserve as it's applicable to that boundary.
Could I ask what your views are on the alternate wording that's suggested by the applicant, and the mayor is also asking to?
As far as the acquisition goes, the development and the upgrading of Caulfield Street's already happened. So there's not likely to be a requirement for acquisition in the future. You'd only be acquiring the land in the future if you needed it because of the road widening. Now, the road widening and the upgrades have already happened. The result of which is that we've now got a road reserve which is significantly less than what's required, and we've got, effectively we can't even fit a dual use footpath in that location because how much it narrows down. The Commission are looking at applying the condition wording as per the standard subdivision conditions, which is exceeded fair cost, and they haven't at the moment. I don't believe we're looking at it as a separate lot for future acquisition. It's already been upgraded. The need's there, and it's reserved currently as well. So,
sorry, I need to understand that a little better. So, what the applicant's suggesting is a condition.
The applicant's suggesting that a future lot be set aside pending the road widening requirements. Now, the road's already been widened, so there's not going to be any future acquisition of that land for the widening of the road specifically, because the road's already been, the road pavement itself's been widened. What hasn't been widened and what hasn't been given up yet is the reserve width.
But then I get back to the first question. If you look at the plan, which who gave it to us, but I think it might be the applicant, which I presume matches with the actual reserve. We've got turnaround areas and car parking, staff car parking in that area on this plan.
Yeah. So the Commission have said,
on what basis could we possibly approve that section of the car park?
The Commission are comfortable with landscaping and car parking in the other regional road reserve.
But then if we're giving up the land, it's not our land to be able to do that.
No, but it's quite often that we'll have a requirement for a proponent to landscape a verge.
But then I've got car park in what would effectively become public space.
Correct. You could have embayment parking in a reserve. It's quite a small portion. I know also
private car park though. I mean, we can't have it. We can't fudge one area and not the other. I mean, we're either clean about this or we're not.
Yeah. No. So I was about to say, there's actually an oversupply of car bays. So if at whichever point that's given up, potentially the turnaround bay could be removed, and the two bays that are impacted by the request for the widening could effectively be dropped off.
But if you are, sorry, if I can pursue this, if I may, we've got at the moment on this plan landscaping and car parking in the road reserve.
Correct.
Sorry, in that section. You're saying that on Caulfield Street you're constrained because of that. Have you got any? Have you got any plans to actually do something about that? I mean, what's the problem with a 3 metre wide footpath at this time? Because that's the only problem, it seems to me, that we've got at the moment. Why if we've already done the road widening and we're quite happy with development around this, and we have a provision in place where at some stage in the future, if you want to do something, you can, then why do we need to proceed on this now if practically we're not going to act on it?
So what I'm saying is the upgrade to the roads occurred, yes. And what we've got
comfortably without needing to cede the land.
Well, I wouldn't say that, because the road reserve width is not correct. It's from a road safety point of view, you've got there's effectively no overrun. You couldn't safely pull a car off of the road in that location. So there's a number of reasons why that additional area that's identified as other regional roads should be given up. Again, as well, we're dealing with this via a DA, yet we've got a subdivision that's at a foot that's identifying the ceding of that land as well.
So Brendan, can I just, and I know you said the subdivision may not proceed, but the wording that the applicants provided almost compels them to progress that subdivision. And I'm trying to understand that if that land is ceded, what will be the trigger in future to say, all right, give up that turning bay and shift your fence back, and what would be that trigger? And who would pull that trigger?
The fence and retaining is located on the boundary of the other regional road reserve, not the property boundary.
That's right.
So the fence and retaining is not going to have to be pulled out. The only thing that we're going to have that's in the road reserve that is within the property is landscaping. And take your point, there's going to be a small portion of a turnaround, approximately maybe 2 square metres, and probably
car bay.
Probably 5 to 6 square metres of one of the staff car parking bays.
Yep.
So
what would be the trigger though for that
to be removed?
Physical works to happen.
I mean, the Commission are comfortable with that being located within the reserve, and the city is comfortable with that being located within the reserve. And it's not uncommon for, portions of, what other than, I'll put this here, other than that being a corner lot truncation, what difference would a small portion of a turnaround for a car bay be from a crossover or a driveway? So effectively, it's the same thing.
I'm not fussed about that. What I'm trying to get my head around is you're asking as a condition of planning approval for a childcare centre to cede land at zero cost. And I would sort of understand that if there's the need to widen the road, and you're saying the road's been widened, but the road reserve width is not ideal, which confuses me because I don't know why they would widen a road if it wasn't ideal. But let's assume it's not ideal because cars can't pull off and. So at some point in future, someone would want to do some work to rectify that. What's the trigger for that? Will works actually be required or not?
So there's no works required to the road itself. The works, all of the works that are needed to be done to that road have been done.
So the road
issue-
reserve won't need any works.
No, the road reserve
extra
won't need any addition. We won't need any additional width on how it currently sits. However, from a safety point of view, there's not sufficient width in the reserve. So at the moment, if someone was to pull up, if someone broke down in that location and they had to pull off the road, effectively they'd be pulling onto the footpath with half of the car potentially hanging out onto the road.
So how will that change, given that the fence and the retaining wall are already set back on the ORR boundary?
Yeah. So obviously there's the additional width in the reserve that's not privately owned. And then there, as it currently stands, while the applicant's shown the fence on the other regional road boundary, there's nothing that would prevent them from coming in and installing a fence along the actual property boundary. And boundary fences are exempt from planning approval. So we'd have no control there. Additionally, what we would get is that we'd get a truncation that potentially would end up having no sight lines or inappropriate sight lines. As it currently sits, there's no development in that location other than a couple of trees. But what it prevents in the future is the applicant or the landowner coming in and installing inappropriate infrastructure in those locations, which then add additional road safety issues in that locality.
Can't you condition that? Can't you condition that away rather than requiring the land to be ceded free of cost as part of this?
But does that not serve the same purpose?
Not really.
Well, if the statutory head of body is the MRS and it's reserved under the MRS, I'll put to you, why then is it reserved under the MRS? Why would then, if the commission didn't want to pursue it, why haven't they amended the MRS to take it off?
Because it's the MRS.
Yeah, but equally, there's a subdivision application that's afoot that's requiring the same thing. We've also got a development control policy that requires either at subdivision or development that the land be ceded. And it can either be at ceded free of cost or at a future time for acquisition as it may be needed. Now, I've already explained the road's been widened. There's no additional works. However, the road reserve width is insufficient.
However, your condition says land required for road widening. So wouldn't the applicant's condition that, and maybe you want to tweak that a little bit, wouldn't that be better? It sort of compels them to progress the subdivision and through that process cede the land. It seems to be more effective at achieving what you're asking for than the wording of your current condition.
Yeah, so I guess probably the terminology in our conditions saying road widening should have just said the land it is identified as the regional road reserve be ceded free of cost.
Can I get a question here at some point? Because I've had my hand up for quite some time.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
It's all right. And actually, fact, I had it up since item 15 that we were discussing, so I'm going to come back to that when we're finished with this. But my question is we kind of feel like we're going around in circles a little bit here, but if the city is under the obligation to abide by what the MRS is saying, can I have that answered first? Is the city under obligation to abide by what the MRS requirements are?
Yes.
Thank you.
A decision maker, as far as the development control policy is concerned, a decision maker should be making a decision based on the requirements of the MRS.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor, you
that section if you like.
I want to go on a little bit further from that, because now I'm thinking that if they've got excess car bays and to avoid future confusion about this land and what's on it, why would the city not just say you can't put anything on that land and just keep it as vegetation?
I guess because the Department of Planning have said that they would allow landscaping and car parking and access within that portion of the reserve. So
Okay.
They didn't object to the plan as such, did they?
correct. The only thing that they objected to in that area was permanent structures.
Yeah.
Would we, as a city, have the right to object to anything on that land, given that the DPLH said they don't have an issue with it?
I mean, potentially we could take the position that we don't want to have that development in that portion of the reserve. It's not that, but I mean, in that From a road management point of view, that portion of the reserve is managed by the DPLH, but we do all the roadworks.
Under the subdivision, it would be set aside for future acquisition, wouldn't it?
So the current condition is basically it's ceded free of cost.
In the draft subdivision?
In the draft subby conditions, correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I think we've thrashed this out a fair bit. I think we can go now into and leave you alone for a minute, Brenton.
Oh, no, I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Councillor. You've got condition 15, haven't you?
Yes, thank you. I just want to clarify that where it says you've got a retainer wall of 500 and then you're going to have a 2.4 metre fence on top of that, that means from the street walking at the pavement, you're going to have nearly a 3 metre fence on the side. Is that correct?
Correct.
Where in the conditions does it say that you have to have, because all it says is visually permeable above 1.2. So where does it say? I couldn't see it. Maybe it's somewhere else that it has to be the retainer wall plus the 2.4 on top. Maybe I'm missing where that's written.
So usually the determination of above 1.2 is deemed to be from what is the natural ground level. Now, natural ground level in this instance is the top of the retaining wall. Yeah.
Natural ground level in the centres would be that, but on the footpath it wouldn't be, would it?
No. So effectively, the way it works is if you under the R codes, if you approve a development with new retaining levels. The new retained level effectively becomes the natural ground level for the purpose of that calculation.
And forgive me, this is a naive question. I understand it may not, may show my full level of understanding of this, but could the city just make that the 2.4 from the ground level from the footpath? And what would the implications be of that?
So the implications there are that the modelling from the acoustic side of things needs that overall height. So it says a 2.4 fence, but in reality it's 2.9 because it modelled with the site levels that were shown. So what they're saying is on top of the site level, which includes the retaining, you need to then put a 2.4 metre high fence to ensure that you're complying with the acoustic requirements of the noise report.
Is that because the proponents are worried about the noise coming into the centre? Because surely it's not because the noise going out onto Caulfield Street.
Correct. So I guess there's twofold with this one. So in most other childcare centres that aren't located on roads like high order roads or other regional roads, effectively the noise that gets modelled is the noise from the kids out, and then obviously the car park associated with that. In this case, you've got the State Planning Policy 5.4, which is road and rail noise. And so the road and rail noise, that's associated with Caulfield Ave, as adjoining sensitive land uses need to put mitigation methods into the dwelling design or building design to basically combat that noise. And a lot of it is a lot of the time handled via effectively a noise wall. So like if you were to drive down the freeway, you see the noise walls on both sides of the freeway. That's a direct result of the noise generated on the freeway out onto those properties. And it's a similar thing here in that the noise generated from Caulfield Ave itself is basically creating an impact that's higher than the allowed levels on that development and therefore needs a wall or an acoustic fence.
Brent, is that because the childcare centre is considered a sensitive land use?
Yes, as would be a house, as would be a dwelling. A lot of the time dwellings have, they can do it in a couple of different ways. It can be noise packages that get implemented into the design of the development, and then also can be noise walls, a combination of a number of things to address it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to wave my hands around next time, okay? Because that little yellow hand doesn't work, does it?
Oh, sorry, I was engrossed in Brenton's explanations. Okay, thank you. All right, no further questions of Brenton? Okay, all right. Well, let's move into the item itself. And in order to do so, I need a mover to the motion that is before us for approval with those conditions. Do I have a mover? Yes, Member Page. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Mr. Syme. Member Page, would you like to?
Yes, okay, thank you. Look, before I speak to the substantive, I would like to move a couple of amendments, or a few amendments. The first of which is to delete condition 13, which requires separate approval for signage, and I'll provide my reasons if I have a seconder.
I have a seconder. Yes, Mr. Syme.
Thank you, presiding member. Look, I think there is sufficient detail provided in the application document about the nature of the signage proposed. Mr. Scambler has confirmed that the signage all complies with the city's planning policy. I think requiring separate approval for the signage is an unnecessary duplication of process as suggested by the applicant. Separately, I'll deal with an amendment about the road widening, but I'd suggest that the separate amendment would resolve this, but in case that isn't passed, if the road ever needs, or if the road reserve ever needs to be increased, that signage can be removed or relocated at that point. So, and then at that point, a separate application for signage may be required. So, not unlike parking, if a sign is erected in that space and it does need to be removed in future, then it will need to be removed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Syme, you wish to speak?
Yes, look, I agree with those points, and it's my view as well. The sign, as a sign, clearly meets all of the requirements of the city, and they've acknowledged that. The sign, as it's in its location, even though it is in the reserve area, if that is ever required, even if condition 13 endures, I think there's sufficient in the system there to require the removal of that sign, if it is required, if that land is required at some stage in the future. So I think it is unnecessary that a separate application for signage be pursued in this case.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers on that?
Just to say that I agree with that. I see the officer's intent, but I do think that a sign could be easily removed, and whilst it may be considered a permanent structure, it's certainly not a hard structure to remove. So happy to support that amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Fairsley, do you wish to speak? No? Okay, all right. I'll tend to agree with that. Okay, do you wish to speak further on the matter? Okay, I'll put the amendment 1 to delete condition 13. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Member Page.
Thank you. And this may need to be resolved a little further through conversation, but I would seek to replace the current condition 14, which requires land for the road widening to be ceded or given up. I'd like to replace that condition with the following wording. No development, parking or on-site landscaping shall occur within the land identified for the other regional roads reservation. Any resulted changes to the parking layout to accommodate this requirement shall be to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells at building permit stage. I have a seconder, I'll explain why.
Yeah, I'll second that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, I think from what we've heard today, this is a very complex issue. If this was about land needed to be given up for the purpose of widening a road, then it almost makes sense. But the road has been widened. I accept Mr. Scambler's explanation that maybe that road was widened in circumstances that weren't ideal, and perhaps it's not as safe as it could be. I'm thinking, therefore, that there is a concern that maybe the subdivision doesn't progress, and therefore the ability to require the land to be ceded at that point may not exist. Now, whether or not that is the case, I think the wording that I've suggested just ensures that at no point Mr. Scambler was concerned about in future the proponent or the owner putting structures in that space which would then prevent it from being used for a car that pulls off the road or needs to be pulled off the road. I'm thinking that the amended wording would enable that extra road reserve width to be provided in a practical sense, even if it's not seeded initially, and it would enable that acquisition to occur in the future, or would enable the seeding of the land in line with a subdivision application to be formalised in the future. So I'm thinking that just may be what we need as a stopgap for the minute.
Okay.
Can I?
As a seconder.
Yes.
Thank you. Unless you had a question that might be relevant to what I'm going to talk on.
Well, I was just going to say what status the land will stay as. So you're saying no development to occur within that area.
I just have the wording again, because I'm not too sure if it allows this car parking to be actually built or not, and that's not.
So it doesn't, and so I'll explain it again.
Yeah.
The status would be that for now, until a subdivision application is approved that requires seeding of the land is technically owned by the current landowner, but it is kept free of any structures or landscaping that would prevent a car from pulling off as per Mr. Scambler's concerns. The extra road widening is not required for road widening, it's required for width, to allow the road widening to be safe and effective. So for that to occur in a practical sense, you need to keep structures and landscaping and turnaround bays and fencing and out of that. Now, to a large degree, that's already being done. But what I'm saying is the wording of this condition requires a building permit stage for them to preemptively reconfigure that turnaround bay, get rid of part of one of those bays so that the centre can be built as though the land is to be given up now. And then it allows for the safe access of that space by vehicles now, even if the land isn't given up. It may not be ideal, but I'm just thinking instead of requiring that land to be seeded as part of a planning application, which I'm not comfortable with, and instead of waiting for a subdivision to do that, which may or may not occur, this is a bit of a stopgap. If the subdivision is progressed and requires that land to be seeded, then condition 14 falls away. So it's a bit of a stopgap in that sense. The wording again that I suggested is no development, parking or on-site landscaping shall occur within the land identified for the other regional roads reservation. Any resultant changes to the parking layout to accommodate this requirement shall be to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells at building permit stage. It may be a temporary condition that falls away.
Yeah. Now, as a seconder, I second it so I could hear what you had to say on it, but I'm in agreement with all of what you're saying, but I would like to see that area actually vegetated as, and I realise that could have to come down at a later date, but maybe it never has.
I would then be happy.
Sorry, we did lose your audio for a second there, Mayor Linus. No, we've lost you audio.
Why?
Now we're here.
Got you back now.
Sorry. I would prefer that you leave it that it could be vegetated just for visual, and also maybe there is option to have some trees there. We've got a lot of community that are upset about all these trees that are going to get pulled down, and rather than just leave it empty, they could vegetate it. It may or may not ever have to be accessed. Just have it vegetated rather than have the car parking on there is what I would be happy with.
So if I may,
yes,
the wording was amended to no development or parking shall occur within the land identified. Any resultant changes to the parking layout. We removed the on-site landscaping bit. Shall I read it again in its entirety?
No, I'm just saying, is your intention to not have any vegetation or landscaping on that turnaround in the second bay?
No. So we can, in line with what you've just said now, I'll reword it and I'll read it out now and see if there's comfort with that or not. No development or parking shall occur within the land identified for the other regional road reservation. Any resultant changes to the parking layout to accommodate this requirement shall be to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells at building permit stage. So it still enables that space to be landscaped.
Okay, yes, thank you. I'll be happy with that.
Okay, all right, we've had discussion on any other. Yes, Mr. Syme, you.
Yeah, I'm not happy with this at all. The plan as we've got in here has got car parking in there. I think even though there's a slight increase, a slight surplus, I think it's not a bad thing that it's there. Even though we've got a theoretical problem which the city has identified in terms of car runoffs, really we're delving into minor aspects of road design, which really practically are rarely ever actioned. I mean, really, we're starting to sacrifice an awful lot for something which is a bit theoretical, and in a practical sense, I wonder whether any of this work would actually ever be done. I can't imagine that it's going to be a priority for anybody to actually do anything beyond what is here at any point in time. We haven't got terribly busy roads here. There's no idea that they're going to get busier over a long period. I really think we're slugging away with a sledgehammer in something which really needs to be set here and then let rest for a while. And there are plenty of provisions around, and I think I must say, I've foreshadowed that I prefer the applicant's version of it. That will allow, should anything be required at some stage in the future, for any work to be done. Now, you know, we might say, well, the road's already been widened, but the road widening works in its entirety have not always been done. If at some stage in the future the road widening works, which might include allowing for some theoretical runoff of a car at some stage, or putting a principal shared path along there or something, both of which seem to me to be extremely unlikely. If that were to happen, then the road widening works provision still is there. The MRS is still on foot. I think we've got in front of us a plan which shows good landscaping, a generous amount of car parking. That's not a bad thing in this location. A respectful and safe provision on the truncation itself. I can't see the point of this, and I won't be voting for it.
Councillor Islam, do you wish to speak? No. Look, I tend to agree with Mr. Syme. In this situation, and I've faced it many times on development applications, most notably in the Captain Stirling Hotel in Nedlands, the major redevelopment of that site for Woolworths store, and across the road from that there was an Aldi store proposed. There was quite a bit of infrastructure being allowed within the lot, and the condition was that the land be set aside for a future acquisition by the Commission, and similar to this, so create a separate lot, and the Commission will either approve or refuse that subdivision creation of the separate lot. I think we'll leave it up to the Commission to, in my view, it will, in this situation, they have to go to the Commission to set it aside as a separate lot. And if it's required free of cost, it'll be taken free of cost either way. But in terms of the development, we've got a development application that shows landscaping in that area, shows a bit of parking. If it's got to be removed later, that'll be done through the heads of power by the Commission. So I won't be supporting the amendment either. So at that being the case, everyone's had a chance to speak to this amendment, and you have a right of reply.
I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I just feel at the moment, I certainly feel that condition 14 as it's currently worded is not acceptable from my perspective. And I think that the wording that I've suggested is a stopgap, as I said earlier. If this amendment is lost, then I would certainly put on the table the applicant's wording, because I think that is suitable in a different way, but suitable.
Okay.
Equally suitable.
All right. Well, I'll put amendment 2 to amend condition 14 as per the suggestion by member Page. All those in favour? Against? The amendment is lost.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I then seek to move to replace condition 14 relating to the ceding of land with the wording suggested by the applicant. The wording shall be as follows. The land that is identified for the other regional road reservation is to be set aside as a separate lot for acquisition pending future road widening requirements. At the time of the land being taken, all structures are to be removed at the costs of the landowner.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Yes, Mr. Syme.
I think the reasoning is, we've already discussed it. The land for potential road widening has been largely kept free of permanent structures in case it's required. I don't think it's appropriate for a planning condition like this to require land to be ceded at this point. And it can be dealt with via the subdivision process, which is effectively required by this condition.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers to? Yes.
Yes, look, we've seen this condition, this circumstance many times before, and as the presiding member has noted, spectacularly, I think, in 3 or 4 developments around the Stirling Highway, including the Chellingworth side as well, which has got very similar sorts of conditions, and had exactly the same resolution to it, where a separate lot was created, which allowed use of the site reasonably until such time it was practically required for road widening purposes. And as I said, even though the physical road widening of the carriageway itself might have already occurred, the road widening works in their entirety have not been completed. So if at some stage somebody wants to get in and do that, they are quite capable of accessing the land at that stage via this provision. I also have a bit of a problem with need and nexus in this case as well. I think this is an appropriate provision which allows sensible and practical use of the land as designed and as planned and as proposed, but also allows, if circumstances or enthusiasm changes for future works out of the public sector at some stage in the future, that still allows that to happen.
Okay, Mayor Lyons, you wish to speak to the matter? We've lost you again. Okay,
Here.
That's because I haven't unmuted myself.
Thank you very much.
Look, I will support this. I will always find, if there's a way to retain more or to have more vegetation, I will always look at that way first. But given that was not supported, then I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Islam, you wish to speak?
No, thank you.
Okay. Look, at the end of the day, the actual acquisition of the road widening area is still subject to an appeal process during the subdivision stage, or the applicants can still appeal this, see how successful they are. I don't think they're too worried about losing the land as such. I think they just want some compensation for it, perhaps. Okay, and that's debatable as to whether they'll get that through the subdivision stage, and they'll have an appeal anyway. Okay, Member Page, you have a right of nothing further. All right, I'll put the amendment to condition 14 as proposed. All in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you, presiding member. And then I would seek to delete part 1 of condition 15 and amend part 2 of condition 15, but I'd like to move those separately if I may.
Okay, so amendment 4 will be?
Delete part 1 of condition 15, which requires side and rear fencing to be masonry or similar. And I'll provide my reason if I have a second.
Okay, all right. Seconder for that? I'll second it.
Thank you. We explored this quite a bit during questioning of the city. The noise management plan does not specify a requirement for this fencing to be masonry. From a noise attenuation perspective, colour bond to certain specification is acceptable to deal with the noise issue. To my mind, therefore, the use of colour bond fencing, provided it meets those sound attenuation requirements, would be adequate. I don't feel that, especially given the current fencing is colour bond and the extent of the retaining wall proposed is going to be the key interface with the adjoining residential property. I don't think it's out of keeping with the surrounding residential properties. I acknowledge the comments made by the city that they have a policy that they consistently apply that requires any non-residential development to have a masonry fence, but I'm not of a mind to stick with that just because a policy says that. This is a childcare premises, which is a very common part of any residential fabric. It's not like it's not offices, it's not a veterinary clinic, it's not a medical centre, it's a childcare centre. And I just feel that to require masonry walls on these boundaries to replace an existing colour bond fence, I don't think is reasonable. So I would suggest that that part of condition 15 can be deleted.
Thank you. I'll agree with that sentiment. The key to the fencing is the noise assessment. It's replacing existing colour bond fencing, albeit with a retaining wall as well on one side. So I think that's a reasonable deletion of part 1 of condition 15. Any further speakers? Yes, Mayor.
Yes, I'll be speaking against this amendment. What you've got here is you've got residents who've had a certain lifestyle up until when a early learning centre is being put next to them. This centre is going to have approval for 100 children there, and I don't believe that a colour bond fence offers the same amount of noise buffer as what a masonry fence would be. We have this in our policy here in the City of Gosnells. The staff have implemented it because it's what our council has decided. And I think that that should be taken into consideration, the impact that all of those children that could be playing, not saying they'll be playing all in the same area, but there could be 20 or more children playing right along that fence line where people are living and having their life. And I feel that a colour bond fence would not offer the same buffer as what a masonry fence would be. So I'll be not supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Syme, you wish to...
Yes, look, I think the noise attenuation issues are actually dealt with in the acoustic report itself, and it's actually calling for a double colour bond fence, not a single one. So I think in terms of noise attenuation, I think we've got comfort in the acoustic report itself, which means that any barrier in there must have a certain acoustic performance. I think what we're talking about now is and so I don't think that that's an issue that we've got. I think we're talking about amenity in this case. And if we look at what the practical effect is in this case, we've got really a very high, it's at least about a 1.8 metre retaining wall from the point of view of the unit next door, and we're talking about 3 or 4 of those units. And they're built very close to the boundary, it seems to me. There's not much outside the back door. So what they're seeing is actually a masonry retaining wall. Above that, there'll be whatever there happens to be, if it's a double colour bond fence or whatever achieves the required noise attenuation. So I think from an amenity point of view, there's no diminution. In fact, it's probably superior because they're getting a nice masonry wall to look at. From an acoustic performance point of view, I think we are safeguarded by the acoustic report itself. So for that reason, even though it's not contrary to strict policy, I think a sensible solution in this case is actually to allow whatever fencing is up there pretty much out of sight from the neighbour's point of view, that it achieves the acoustic separation that's required. So in that regard, I don't think that I think we can safely remove this clause.
So can I have a question?
I'll allow it, yes.
Thank you. I'm just not sure where it's mentioned that it's a 1.8 metre retainer wall. I was under the impression that it was different levels levelling up to 1.5 at the most.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the spot heights, and there's not a lot of detail there, but we've got spot height of 19.4 RL on the general level of the site, the childcare site, and a spot height of I think 17.6 or something like that at the lower level where the units are next door. So they're the numbers that I'm relying on. There's not a lot of other numbers there, but it looks to me to be about almost 1.8.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, I think Mr. Scambler explained that towards the front of the property, that retaining wall will be lower, but as the residential property moves towards the rear, that retaining wall will be 1.790. So it gets down to its highest point at the rear there. But even with the lesser height in the front, it really does push that fence higher than it currently is, I guess.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion on it? If not, as the member Page, you wish to close debate?
Nothing further.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to voting on amendment number 4 to the part 1 of condition 15. All those in favour? That's 4 against, 1 Mayor Line. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. My last amendment is to amend the second part of condition 15 so that it's not so specific, but instead to require the plan submitted for the building permit to include front fencing that achieves the acceptable outcomes of the R codes to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells. And I'll give you my reason if I have a second.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Islam. Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Look, there was a lot of to and fro about this fencing earlier, and I think there is a lot that is still unresolved. And even if we go with the applicant's suggestion, I think there's still some conversation that needs to be had with the city, and I'm confident that the city's officers, their planning officers, can make the call whether or not a front fence meets the acceptable outcomes of the codes. I have concern about some of the explanation that's been provided that effectively sacrifices a decent front fence for the sake of casual surveillance from an outdoor play area through a door into a toilet. I think that can be differently designed. It can be mitigated through additional landscaping. My view is the height of that finished floor level of that play area, and certainly of the building itself, which will be higher than the play area, the height of that finished floor level above the footpath, which is then separated with but with a certain amount of space, is adequate to prevent the issues that the applicant is concerned about. However, given I'm not a specialist in that, I think if there are legitimate concerns that require some infill panels to be provided or some solid panels to be provided, I'm satisfied that the city's offices can resolve that at building permit stage. I'm not comfortable, just for the record, with colour-bond fencing on the street frontages. I don't think that's an acceptable standard for a non-residential development in a residential area. So while I was comfortable for back colour-bond fences, that's part of a residential fabric. In my view, it is not on a front fence. So I'm not interested in whether there's a cost impost. Most childcare centres that we deal with do make an effort with those front fences. So I'm proposing that that amended wording will allow the city to resolve that at building permit stage. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Islam, a seconder. Do you wish to speak further? No. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to? Yes, Mayor Lyons.
Sorry, jumping in. I just wanted to make sure that that would give the officers the option to reinforce that it needs to be visually permeable above 1 point for the top 1.2.
Oh, what was that?
Oh, don't tell me I've locked out again.
No, you haven't dropped out. I think what that means, Mayor Lyons, is the R codes as a first port of call say that it should be visually permeable above 1.2. But if you can't achieve that in certain circumstances, it does allow the city's officers to exercise their discretion to say it doesn't all have to be visually permeable above 1.2. So I guess that's what we're suggesting, or what I'm suggesting, is that we allow the city officers to go away and say, well, we do want visually permeable for all of it, but we're accepting this bit and this bit to not be visually permeable. So we'll leave it to them to work that through instead of trying to deal with it on the run as to which bits should be visually permeable and not.
Mayor Lyons, Mr. Scambler would like to clarify something that may affect your Brenton, if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, look, I just want to clarify that if you put it as a front bound, so what we're dealing with is Caulfield Street.
Yes.
Caulfield Street, by definition under the R codes, is a secondary street.
Right.
On a secondary street, under the R codes, there is no requirement for visual permeable fencing. I just want to make that clear. So if you change the condition to reference a front fence, by virtue of that, you've allowed a solid fence. I just wanted to make that point.
So may I, Mr. Scambler, if we were to say amended plan shall be submitted as part of the building permit application that require the fencing on Caulfield and the other street to achieve the acceptable outcomes of the R codes for front fencing?
That would be suitable. I think you need to specify, though, that it applies to Caulfield as well, because if you just mention the front fence as you'd previously worded it, the ultimate outcome would be that they could have a solid fence on Caulfield. I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, so that's the wording that you're proposing.
Yep. So I guess then I'm happy to shift it to say amended plans shall be submitted as part of the building permit application that demonstrate that all fencing along Caulfield Street and Dorothy Street achieve the acceptable outcomes of the R codes for front fencing to the satisfaction of the City of Gosnells.
Councillor Islam, as seconder, are you happy with that change to the condition?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak further to it? No. Councillor Mayor Lyons, are you happy with that, or are you okay? Mr. Simon, did you wish to speak?
Yes, look, I agree with this entirely. I think this needs, as you might gather, this needs a lot more work. I don't think this design has been fully resolved. I think the landscaping and the front fence and the building interface really need a lot more work. And if this is a means of doing that, where we're interacting between whatever happens in the landscape plan, which I think needs a lot more work, and the front fence and whatever detail there might be in the building itself, if this is a cause for rethinking all of that, then I think it's important.
Okay, thank you. I tend to agree with that as well. So I'll go back now to, to say to Member Page.
For the substantive
No.
or
No,
to
just
vote
on this amendment.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay. All right, Amendment 5, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And now back onto the substantive.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Look, I support the recommendation for approval subject to those amendments that we have already made. I note the concerns raised by the community during consultation, and those relate primarily to impacts on residential amenity, congestion and safety, oversupply of centres in the area and loss of cockatoo habitat. I'm of the view that the usual contributors to negative amenity are not present with this application, given and if the front fencing is amended to more of a residential style of fence. The proposal otherwise aligns with the relevant provisions of the R codes required for this development by virtue of clause 32 of the city's planning scheme. Although there's less landscaping proposed in the front setback than required by the codes and therefore local planning policy 1.6, the city is comfortable that the areas of landscaping proposed together with the landscaped play areas will ensure adequate, well-landscaped open space on the site, and I'm happy with their assessment. In relation to traffic and congestion, I'm satisfied with the traffic impact assessment conclusions that vehicle movements that are likely to be generated can be comfortably and safely accommodated within the surrounding road network, and I note that the city also agrees with those conclusions. And the noise assessment provided with the application and accepted by the city demonstrates that noise levels within the noise regs can be achieved. I therefore struggle to accept that the proposal will unduly impact the amenity of the surrounding area. Issues raised of demand and supply of centres is not an issue that this panel should reasonably consider. And it is a great pity that the 2 jarrah trees located towards the middle of the site need to be removed, but I reluctantly accept that retention of the trees would be difficult given the earthworks required and the footprint of the building. So happy to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder. Simon?
Oh, me. Yes, look, nothing much more to add. I think we've discussed all the principal issues from a land use point of view. It's entirely appropriate. It's a good location for it. I think subject to, I think in general terms, the general approach has been logical and to be expected and will fit in with the general area. I do note the departure from the suggestion from the DPLH that play areas facing Caulfield Street be relocated or not be there. I think in this case, I understand the thinking behind that general sentiment or that general provision, but I think in this case, even though Caulfield Street is a secondary road, it's at a lower level. It's only 20,000 vehicles per day. Dorothy Road's only 8,900 vehicles a day. The issues of play spaces next to roads, busy roads, really start to become sharper when they are really busy roads. I mean, we've had them in Leach Highway, for example, and on intersections at Leach Highway. Then we've got to start to really worry about the health effects of play spaces next to roads. I think in this case, we're looking at a roundabout, so there's continuous traffic movement. The actual, while there is it's not ideal to have any play space next to a busy any road at all. In this case, I think the effects are minor, and I think we can depart from the DPLH suggestion in that case, which this one does. I think with the amendments that we've now got in place, I think all the rest of the issues regarding this centre have been satisfactorily addressed. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further speakers to the motion? Mayor Lyons?
No, thank you. I think you've both summed it up beautifully. And as far as the issue with passerbys being able to see into the toilet area, I don't really see any reason why they couldn't just put an internal screen in there. That would be their decision. But I do hope that the end result is that we do have a fully visually permeable fence above that 1.2 high area. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Islam, you used to speak to the motion. Okay, well, I'll just concur with the other panel members that have fleshed out their comments and say that we've given it a fairly decent thrashing as far as discussion on a few of the principal items that were taking our attention, such as noise, fencing, seeding of land, and I think we've come up with a decent resolution with the amendments that we've put forward. So I'll now move back to Member Page to conclude the discussion.
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, then I'll put the motion as amended with four amendments that passed, one didn't. With the amendments, all in favour? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we don't have any Form 2 DAP applications. Item 5, we don't have any DAP 1 reconsiderations. Part D, other business. There are no applications and DAPs are listed in the current application report on the DAP website. With no further business, I'll thank the panel members here, the presenters, and of course the hard-working staff of the City of Gosnells and the even harder working staff in our secretariat. I'll close the meeting at 12:05 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.